What really makes a community? It's so much more than just a place on a map, right? It's this incredible mosaic of stories. You have stories of joy, stories of struggle, and stories of healing. Today, we're going to piece together a few of those from Southern California to see what kind of bigger picture they paint for us. So that leads us to the big question for today. What are the stories that truly define a community's health and, its heart? We're going to explore this through a few different lenses. The incredible power of cultural heritage, the tough fight for healthcare equity, and the absolutely fascinating science of how we heal.
All right, let's dive into our first piece of the puzzle: heritage, art, and community. We're looking at how traditions and celebrations aren't just about looking back at the past. They're actually about weaving this strong cultural fabric for the future. And there's a perfect example of this that, get this, was born right in the heart of Los Angeles.
Let's talk about Kwanzaa. Now, you might be surprised to learn that it isn't some ancient holiday. It was actually created in Los Angeles back in the 1960s by Dr. Maulana Karenga. He rooted it in African harvest traditions, and the name itself actually means first fruits. What a beautiful symbol of a community's hard work paying off.
And at the absolute core of Kwanzaa are the Nguzo Saba, or the 7 principles. Each day of the celebration focuses on one of these key values, everything from unity all the way to faith. It's a really powerful framework for building a strong, empowered community, not just for a week, but all year long.
And the spirit of building community through culture, it's alive and well all across Southern California. Just look at Inglewood, where a recent jazz fest was so much more than just great music. It was a fundraiser for Hope Academy, literally turning the joy of jazz into real, tangible opportunities for the next generation of scholars.
All of this brings to mind a powerful quote from the civil rights leader Fannie Lou Hamer. She said, "We should never forget where we came from and always praise the bridges that carried us over." It's a beautiful thought, right? But it also makes you ask the question, what happens when those bridges are broken? And that leads us to our next topic, the very real challenges in healthcare. Okay, so let's shift gears to a really critical issue. This is where the gap between what a policy says on paper and what people actually experience can be a matter of life and death. We're talking about the healthcare equity gap and why good intentions don't always translate to good outcomes for everybody.
Now, if you just look at the policy, California looks like a leader in maternal health. The state has one of the nation's most comprehensive systems with full Medi-Cal coverage and even doula access for all pregnant people, no matter what their immigration status is. It sounds like a perfect system, doesn't it? But the data tells a very different story.
And this is where you look at the numbers and it's just stark. In 2023, the maternal mortality rate for Black women was over 3 times higher than for white or Hispanic women. So even with this really robust system on the books, a massive, life-threatening disparity is still there. The question is, why?
And this kind of gap, this confusion, it also pops up for seniors trying to navigate Medicare. To get it, you just need to know there are basically 2 main roads you can take. There's Original Medicare, which is the federal program, and then there's Medicare Advantage, which is run by private companies that often bundle in extra services like dental or vision.
And this is where that lived experience becomes so important. For 76-year-old Joanne Craig, her Medicare Advantage plan turned into this frustrating battle. In her words, they don't want to give you specialists and they try to work around the system. She said she had to identify her own cancer because they kept saying there was nothing wrong. Her story is just this powerful, painful reminder of the human cost of a confusing system.
But then you have 69-year-old Jill Baker, who had a completely different experience with her plan. She said, "They've been pretty good. I've been pleasantly surprised by the care and the attention that they've given me." This stark contrast is exactly what makes the system so confusing and, for so many people, deeply unfair.
These stories of struggle, whether it's in the maternal health system or just trying to navigate Medicare, they really highlight the incredible stress and, let's be honest, the trauma that these kinds of systemic issues can cause. And that brings us to our final section, this deep connection between trauma, aging, and the path to healing.
You've probably heard this phrase before, right? It's a really direct question. Why isn't trauma just a memory or an emotion? Why do people say that it gets stored in the body?
Well, according to clinical psychologist Dr. Lenore Tate, the answer is visceral and it is physical. Unresolved trauma isn't just in your head. It can show up as real, measurable health problems. We're talking about things like high blood pressure, digestive issues, a weaker immune system, cognitive decline, and even accelerated aging. So if trauma is this deeply rooted thing, what's the path to healing? Dr. Tate gives this surprisingly simple but really profound answer. Belongingness is the e-ticket to mental well-being. Now, for those who don't know, an e-ticket was for the absolute best rides at Disneyland. Her point is that a strong sense of connection, of community, is our best defense against the long-term effects of trauma.
And that brings all of these stories full circle. From the unity of Kwanzaa, to the fight for fair healthcare, to the personal journey of healing, it all comes back to the power of community. It's about building those bridges Fannie Lou Hamer talked about. So we'll just leave you with this to think about. How are you building your community's bridge to a healthier future?